Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Bahashum, Barakahakwadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahashum, Yahweh. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. In peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Aya coming at you with another lesson, and I'll be profiling a little bit of this video from Black Scout Survival's YouTube channel titled Urgent California Threat Warning. And the big, one of the big pieces of information making its way through, alternative media, as well as mainstream media is what? Sleeper cell attacks by Iran, on U.S. soil, which those things will take place, along from other nations, even from your own government. Hey, we are careening quickly into Jacob's trouble. So now more than ever, you sincere Akim and Akwat out there, you should be circumspect. We got the Pesach coming up on April 1st. So, hey, this could very well be the last one, with the way things are looking. But definitely something major like what happened in 2019 to 2021 is coming down the pipeline, which is going to bring society as you know it to a standstill and change things, exponentially, just as the world we're living in now is different from the pre-C19 world. But fair use copyright disclaimer, I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
Guys, something weird is happening over California right now. Federal authorities have warned law enforcement agencies about a possible drone attack originating from a vessel off the United States coast and allegedly tied to Iran. Now, at the exact same time, we have the Navy's E-6B Mercury, better known as the Doomsday plane, that's been spotted flying low over California during approach drills. Now, if you don't know what that aircraft is, that is the plane that's literally airborne command center for nuclear war. Its job is simple. If Washington is destroyed, if ground command is wiped out, if the U.S. is attacked in a catastrophic scenario, the plane becomes the backup brain of the entire U.S. military. It maintains communication with nuclear submarines that can transmit launch orders. It keeps the chain of command alive if the country is hit. So the question becomes, why is that aircraft suddenly flying around California while the FBI is warning about potential drone attacks off the West Coast? Because to me, that combination is not normal. And
stock up this Earth Day with Paleo Valley's buy one, get one free offer on bone broth protein. If you're someone who cares...
Before we get to this, the last part of this video might actually be the most important piece of the puzzle. So stick around. Now, what the FBI actually said, this was intelligence alerts reviewed by ABC News. Federal authorities warned that the California law enforcement that Iran may attempt a retaliatory drone attack against targets on the U.S. West Coast if tensions escalate further. Now, the part that got my attention is the intelligence suggests these drones could be launched from a vessel position off the U.S. coastline.
Now keep this part in mind.
Think about that for a second. And remember back, I did a video about this years ago. Beijing is believed to be developing hidden weapons to strike enemy ports and ships. Hidden missiles in containers, lift out ready to be fired. Now, we would be dumb to believe that this wasn't actually already in existence, because if you're a smart individual in any form of the military, you'd probably position something like that, kind of clandestine ships that could strike your enemies, right? That would make sense. The other thing I want to revert back to is that, remember back in New Jersey right before inauguration, all around the Northeast area. Saw all those weird drones that look like, now we're thinking, the Shahed drones. That one police officer, female, she had a video. She's recording things coming out of the ocean. She talked about it. They took the video from her, and that police officer vanished off the face of the earth. You never heard about it again. So, to me, that was probably true. It was probably maybe conglomeration of our enemies, whatever. Because with a little ship or vessel, you don't need a military base, a missile base. You don't need a military airfield. You can launch drones from something as simple as a cargo ship, fishing vessel, or a container freighter. And suddenly you have kamikaze drones flying towards U.S. cities. And to be honest, my confidence level is down, because would they try to even stop it to get a buy-in from the American public? Oh, America got hit like 9/11. Everybody was patriotic then. So it makes me think that it's very possible they would even allow it. Or do you think we even have competent people in place to even protect us? Officials say they don't have a confirmed time.
Or would it be your own, government, the powers that be behind it, a FALSEFLAG to drum up support, for this growing, war with Iran? Because, you're hearing more and more talks in the news from different people in Trump's cabinet or different politicians, floating the idea of that draft.
Line or targets. Of course, they're not going to know that. And of course, they're not going to say that. They're not going to tell us that. But the fact that warning exists means one thing. They believe the capability is real, or they're planning a false flag attempt, or allowing something to happen, right? Sometimes it's just being compromised, allowing something to happen, okay? And we've seen that type of action throughout history. They allow an attack to happen, so that way it gives them reasoning in the public buy-in to take action. But the part nobody is talking about yet is launching drones from ships. Again, it isn't some crazy Hollywood movie. Iran has actually experimented with containerized drone launch systems. That means drones can be hidden inside standard cargo containers, the same containers that sit all over the world, and a lot of them outside of the California coastline, because that's where a lot of product comes in from foreign countries, Asia especially, into America. They can open it, launch it, and suddenly you have multiple drones flying toward targets hundreds of miles away. It's done. Easy. Right? Now
Notice how I mentioned, containerized attacks, meaning, cargo ships with containers, which are really just mock-ups hiding, drones, missiles, or any other military asset. Which brings us to this article from prnews.wire.com titled, "The Economist Launches the World Ahead 2026 with Rich Countries Living Beyond Their Means and Risk of a Bond Market Crisis is Growing." So this article is dealing with the Economist 2026 cover, which when we go to it, it's got a lot of stuff going on in it. Robots, you see medical shots in there, the 250th birthday of the U.S., different political figures. But when we zoom in, what do you see right here? And it just happens to be firing at the 250th mark for the United States of America in July. You have a cargo ship with the containers opened up and missiles being fired from them, going into exactly what Black Scout Survival is talking about. And like he even mentioned, these attacks could come from Iran, and our government wouldn't say anything about it to foment support for war against Iran, or it could very well be an FF, Well, hey, what the times we're coming into, expect it to be, both. But before we continue, this is 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11. Lest Satan, the physical counterpart of the spiritual demon Satan, Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, specifically their elites, should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. Because, to somebody who doesn't have their spiritual eyes or ears open, they'd hear this and be like, oh, well, shit, that makes a lot of sense. We already know, or this person perceives that Iran is the number one sponsor of terrorism on the earth. So naturally, they would use cargo ships to shoot missiles from. But then why do we go to the Economist cover of 2026 and they have just that, a cargo ship with missiles being fired from it? Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. Hey, this government and the powers that be have shown you before that they're more than happy to put you American citizens on the sacrificial altar to fulfill their goals. Remember what happened back in September of 2001. And, on one of those previous Economist covers, you had Bibi Milkowski, or Bibi Netanyahu, as well as a Hamas member on paragliders flying at each other with guns on them. And, what happened in October 2022, you had Hamas fly in with motorized paragliders. Hey, as they say, the world's a stage. But this is Revelation chapter 12, verse 12. Therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe or destruction to the earth, to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for that devil, that deceiver, again Esau, Edom, is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And the elites of these Edomites, which are 1948ers, and just the 1948ers, as well as the U.S. government as a whole, knows that their time is up. They're getting exposed on every level. Hence why you've got 1948ers like I think it's Larry Ellison, who owns Oracle, buying up TikTok. His son owns Skydance, which is trying to get a handle of Paramount. They've got their hands in trying to get a hold of different mainstream media networks to control the narrative, because so much information is coming out revealing these elites at all level. Look at this whole thing with the big Steen files. And then first and foremost, you have the prophets out here, the men of the Lord, chiefly of GMS or Great Millstone, going out onto the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles like this, going into the scriptures and exposing this devil. So he's about to pull out all the stops to bring about his NWO, his great RESET. And as it said, woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. This devil has shown you that he's more than happy to sacrifice as many people, you Americans included, to get his agenda fulfilled. But then on the flip side, you will have, sleeper cell attacks from the Iranians and, other countries as well, because, America and the 1948ers have done a good job of turning the world against them. As it says in Obadiah chapter 1, verse 2, behold, I have made thee small amongst the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. Your reputation is greatly despised because of all the things you do all across the world. Phony wars in the name of democracy and human rights, when really it's just to install central banks and take people's resources from them, etc., etc. And then as it also says in verse 1, an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. That's exactly what these nations are getting ready to do. And Iran will be a part of that. Remember, during President Biden's, term, he had open borders where people from all different countries were flooding into this country, from China, Turkey, Syria, Africa. And then you had Richie from Boston. I believe either he went down to the southern border or he was using footage from people that went down to the southern border, asking a lot of people, hey, where are you coming from? And a good majority of them said Iran. But this is 2nd Esdras chapter 15 in the Apocrypha. I'm going to jump down to verse 28. Behold, an horrible vision in the appearance thereof from the east, the so-called Middle East, Western Asia, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots. And we can see right now a lot of those Arab nations, those Ishmaelite nations, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Bahrain, Dubai, are caught in the crossfire between this U.S., Israeli, Iran war. And, a lot of them are upset with the U.S. because they're taking a lot of those anti-missile defense assets and using them to, mainly defend the state of Israel, leaving them out to dry. And the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon the earth, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble. Verse 30, also the Carmanians, which, when you look up ancient Carmania, it is in modern-day Iran. So the Iranians, also the Carmanians, the Iranians, raging in wrath, shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood. And, we're seeing them go in a wild fashion right now with all these strikes they're doing against U.S. assets and U.S. allies as assets. Regardless of what Trump is saying in the media about Iran seeking a ceasefire, it's really the U.S. seeking a ceasefire because they were just completely unprepared going into this conflict with Iran, and they're just getting handed to them right now. And with a great power shall they come and join battle with them, the dragons of Arabia joining with the Carmanians, because as these Ishmaelite or so-called Arab nations continue to see that the U.S. has just been using them, for the advantage of themselves, and especially the 1948ers, they're going to, change up those alliances and ultimately link up with Iran. Because remember, they're all Islamic nations at the end of the day. And you've got that famous quote from that devil, Henry Kissinger, to be a enemy of America is dangerous, but to be a friend of America is deadly. Because when you look at the track record of these nations that America was so-called helping, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, at the end of the day, America always, packs up and leaves them hanging to dry. But also the Carmanians raging in wrath shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. And that's speaking of the spiritual Assyrians, the United States of America, and them wasting a portion of the land of the Assyrians can go into sleeper cell attacks with agents on the soils of America, as well as cargo ships with hidden missiles and drones being shooting onto the soil of America, wasting a portion of the land thereof.
Something we
You're the guy with the gun, the person who would do anything to protect the ones you love. But did you know you could go to jail for simply...
done. Easy. Right? Now, imagine that sitting quietly on a cargo ship looks like normal commercial traffic until suddenly a swarm of drones launches toward the U.S. coastline. You think they're going to get all of them, right? And remember something important about this. California ports process about 40% of all imports coming into the United States. Thousands of ships move through those waters every year. Remember when Pete Buttigieg was in charge and he got the whole damn shipping lanes out there? There's cargo sitting out there, people trying to get UPS packages for months because he had it all, when he was breastfeeding his kid. Right? But you wouldn't know which one to even look at because there's so many out there. How are you going to even search all of these things? And Iran has spent years developing this cheap drone tech here, okay? The Shahed 136. This thing is giving us massive problems because we're spending, these things cost anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000. We're spending like $800,000 to shoot one of these things down. And we're burning through our stockpiles at the same time, right? These things are long-range, GPS guided, extremely cheap. They're designed as kamikaze drones. Russia has used thousands of them in Ukraine. You've seen the footage. They buzz around with a propeller, slow approach, and then boom, impact. Now imagine dozens of those, hundreds of those approaching U.S. coastline offshore. Okay, imagine it.
To a missile, which requires a great big launch platform that can be targeted and taken out, and then the missiles are no longer useful. This can be launched from the back of a truck, from the middle of a field, from a boat, compared to a missile which requires a big production facility.
So it's a cheap knockoff, Temu version. But some people may ask, why California? Several reasons. First, California has massive strategic targets, naval bases, ports, defense contractors, technology infrastructure, power grid nodes. Second, California is psychologically symbolic. An attack there would generate massive media coverage, just like New York City. And third,
and remember what happened back in September 2001 in New York City and what that led to. The Patriot Act, the war on terror, the current situation we're in right now.
It's, again, the closest U.S. coastline to Pacific trade routes, meaning a vessel could theoretically launch drones without immediately raising alarms. And again, remember when all those drones were flying in the Northeast and they're all just hobby drones. So these people don't even know what's going on. And there's a lot of hobby drones. So theoretically, they could get away with something like this, right? Now, talk again for a second about the Doomsday plane, the E-6B Mercury, okay? This is a Navy program called TACAMO, stands for Take, Charge, and Move Out. Its job is to maintain communications with U.S. nuclear submarines and missile forces during national emergency. So in other words, if the worst possible scenario ever happened, the plane keeps nuclear command structure alive. It acts like a flying command bunker. And when you suddenly see it doing drills over major population areas, obviously I'm going to ask questions. But
and I believe on April 1st or around, the first couple of days of April is when, Pete Hegseth and the War Department plan on deploying those National Guard rapid response forces they were talking about, throughout the country to quell, instances of civil unrest popping up.
The other thing where this gets interesting is that E-6B isn't even the only aircraft designed for this mission. There's also the E-4B Night Watch. That aircraft is the president's doomsday plane, okay? It's basically a flying Pentagon. It allows the president and military leadership to command U.S. forces.
But yeah, that's pretty much it with that video, but let's...
Bill Cassidy, he turned his back on us, voted to impeach President Trump. Now Cassidy's turned his back on the
strike enemy.
Stop it right here on this image
ships.
And look at it for a second. Beijing, Slovakia. Beijing is believed to be developing hidden weapons to strike enemy ports and ships. The missiles hidden in hidden containers can lift out and be ready to fire And while it may very well be the case from foreign actors, remember what we saw on the Economist cover. The exact same thing, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices, and the devil has come down in great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And look who we have down here. That guy in the blue suit might be Putin, but you got Xi Jinping and who? Benjamin Netanyahu. So hey, and right next to it, two swords with an economic graph in the middle of it. Robots, drones, anything you can think of. Missiles. Oh shit, I just noticed they got let's zoom in a little more. That little thing at the top right corner looks like one of those Shahed drones, and it looks like it's flying from that cargo ship. So hey, something very big is coming down the pipeline. And again, the Pesach, we're about 3 weeks away from it, and something major always happens after the Pesach. So now more than ever, like I said at the beginning of the lesson, you sincere Akim and Akwath should be walking circumspect out here. Playtime has definitely been over. Of course, brothers may go out sometimes just to let their hair down, so to speak, but this isn't the time to be going out every weekend, having a party, bar hopping, going to major sporting events or anything like this, because these are definitely going to be major targets, in the event of terrorist attacks. Look at what happened in Austin, Texas. You'd had a U.S. embassy, I believe, up in it might have been Ontario, that got bombed. And then just recently, you had somebody drive a van, through one of the gates at the White House. So this is Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 to 18. See then that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. And what does it say in Proverbs? A wise man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the fool moveth on and is punished. You got all these things brewing, but for the average American, they're still looking for 2026 to be the year they make their comeback. Well, hey, it may be the year that you make a blowback, to the spirit world, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. And we can clearly see we're living in some very evil days. Wherefore be ye not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is, doing whatever you can to stay in the good graces of your power, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, getting more in the spirit and less in the flesh, in the cares and the affairs of this life, the job, your vices, things you do in the world. Hey, even putting too much into friends and family in the world. You should be focusing on Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, to your brothers in the camp, their brotherhood. Because, when things get hectic, this world is going to turn quick. And, when they do what they can to blame the ministry for things that are going on, you're going to see that a lot of these people in the world are going to turn on you quickly. Verse 18, and be not drunk with wine, the philosophies of this world. Hey, don't be being a drunkard out here as well. And be not drunk with wine, wherein is excess, but be filled with the Spirit, walking in the spirit of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. But that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final week of captivity, the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, Salakia. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.